All right, we are going to make an episode of Beyond the Numbers, not the episode itself, but we're going to make a short for it. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to write me fresh. It's an incognito tab, so it's coming off fresh here. So it has no idea about my podcast or anything like that, any of my voice or how I write things or how I speak or the questions that I ask. So we're just going to ask it a very simple question to get it started off with here. All right, here we go. Write me a 40-second short for a Christian leadership podcast called Beyond the Numbers. I need a description and a title for it as well. The episode that is based off of is one about AI in the ministry. Let's see what it does. And there you have it. I didn't pray about it. I didn't wrestle with it. I didn't even open my Bible to read any bit of it. I just took like 2 minutes, copy, paste, done. This is going to be a 100% AI short. Title, description, even the entire script. And you're going to get to see it later on this week. All of it. As I typed it, that 1 or 2 sentences that I used, I let AI do the rest. And honestly, reading through it is not bad. I mean, it's clean. It'll probably get the clicks, but it's not mine. There's no fingerprints of me on this anywhere. And that is our whole episode. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to sit here and say that AI is evil. I'm not going to do an 18-minute episode sharing with you all of the intricate details of how bad AI is, or how if you're a pastor, using AI at all makes you less spiritual, because the only way to write a sermon is, with some ink and a quill and to end it with a little flourish. That's not what I'm going to do. I mean, to be honest, over the years, I've used AI in its different forms. Sometimes if I'm planning a big event, I love to bounce some ideas off of it to see if I'm missing any blind spots. Or occasionally if I'm researching something, I'll ask it to point me in the direction of some books. Or I have once or twice gotten a little bit overwhelmed with different things I was doing graphically. And so I decided, hey, I need to have it create something. And it does a pretty good job creating some graphics. Although there are some typical tells that you can tell that someone has used AI to make a graphic. I think it's a great tool when it's used as a tool. And that's where I think that something has shifted a bit. Now, it might not have happened all at once, and maybe it's not even something that we meant for it to happen, but somewhere along the way, maybe it was for the sake of convenience or just we were overwhelmed and we needed it, AI started to become within ministry something else. And I want to talk about what that something else is, because I don't think most of it would call it what it is if we saw it clearly. Here's what I mean. I have seen over the last year or two pastors outright admit publicly, not like as a confession, almost as a joke, more as like kind of just, shrug, it happens, everyone does it, that their entire sermon or sermon series that week, that month was AI generated. Start to finish. And when someone pushed back, the answer basically was, well, we've always used commentaries. What's the difference? Or maybe for a youth pastor, well, what's the difference between that and a curriculum? I've also seen ads pop up for different apps ministry-wise that utilize AI, not as a tool, but as the center thing. In fact, one of the most recent ones that popped up was the AI Jesus, and how you can share with this AI all of your concerns, your theological questions, and it'll answer it on behalf of Jesus. And then kind of the scarier thing is I've noticed a shift in youth curriculum where over the last year or so, it's become more obvious to those that know how to look that some youth ministry curriculum, now not all of us use that, but occasionally I've even tapped into some of the curriculum usages, because there are those moments where if you're teaching 3 different days a week, you kind of need a little bit of an idea to bounce off of, a skeleton to build off of for maybe one of those lessons. But it's become obvious that some of these youth curriculums have started utilizing, not as the tool, but as the process, AI. And some youth pastors aren't even aware that the very curriculums that they're teaching from are AI generated. Now, why that's scary is because this is the very same material that is being put out for young kids and very influenceable, if that's a word, teenagers that are helping shape their mind and understand who Christ is. And then it comes out later, well, that was actually assisted or fully wrote by AI. And before anybody gets defensive, I get it. I know that ministry is exhausting. I know that the nights don't ever end. I know that a program gets out at 8, but sometimes you don't get home till 10. Some of us that are doing it part-time, you go from one job to the other, and then there's a sermon on Monday and Wednesday, and then you need to speak at this thing. And then Sunday mornings just seem to keep on coming at you. And I understand that these things can become attractive. But understand, just because something is easy and convenient doesn't always mean that it's the healthiest of things. And here's the part that I want for us to sit with for a second, because I think this is the actual danger of it. It's not really about AI at all. None of that is like a 5-minute joke bit anymore like I did at the beginning. That's not a tool. What we run the risk of, and the real issue here, is that eventually it becomes outsourcing. Like for me, I've had to rebuild my ability to read a book. I know it sounds crazy, but to actually sit still and read a book has become almost impossible for me. And the problem is it's my phone. It's this thing. It's the different screens that we surround ourselves with, the video games that we play, the YouTube channels and the TikTok that we flick through. Like for me, those things have become those quick dopamine hits, but it's rewired my brain to constantly want something shifting and flashy. And I realized when I started to read again and tried to get in deep into some of these books that I used to read all the time, I couldn't sit there for more than 5 minutes without my mind being distracted, without getting bored. It's because over time I allowed the screens to rewire my brain, and because of that, it's made me a bit stagnant in those areas. What I've had to do is I've had to retrain my brain. Like on purpose, discipline it to sit there and be able to read these books, and it's come at a cost and it's come at time, but that is sometimes what convenience does. It doesn't announce itself as being something dangerous. It just quietly starts to remove the friction. And the friction was doing something for you the whole time. You just didn't notice it. So when I hear a pastor say, "Hey, I just wrote my sermon. That's all I do now for series." I mean, it's basically like a curriculum. I don't hear laziness. I hear a muscle that's slowly going soft, and the person doesn't even know it yet. Because studying and wrestling and sitting with that text until it sits within you, that is not just sermon prep. That's spiritual training. And if we skip it enough times, you don't just get like a worse sermon, you get a duller you. So here's the line that I want to draw, and I want to be careful about it, because I think this line is what makes the difference. God can use anything. That's not a new idea. When you read throughout the books in the Bible, you see, like in the book of Numbers, there's a donkey that rebukes a prophet. In the book of Isaiah, you have a king who doesn't even know God's name, and yet he was used to bring Israel home. I mean, you have Peter in the Gospels that has a rooster that brings him to tears. God has never needed something to be spiritual for him to use it. So no, I'm not saying like God can't use AI, because he can use anything he wants. But I think this whole episode has been aimed not at the target of that. Right now, it probably sounds like this is about AI replacing sermons or writing or series. But that's not what this episode is about. I think what this episode is about AI replacing formation. Because while AI can do a whole lot of stuff, here's what AI can't do for you. AI can't be led by the Holy Spirit. It can't groan like in Romans chapter 8 when it says that the Spirit intercedes with us, for us, with groanings that are too deep for words. That's not a phrase. That's not an output. That is the Spirit moving in a person who is present, who's wrestling, who's in the process of being formed. There's no groaning in a language model. I mean, when you open up a commentary, as I have different ones all over the place, you're not talking into a machine. When you do it with a commentary, you're accessing another believer's spirit-led wrestling over a text. Someone prayed over those pages. Someone sat with some of those verses longer than was comfortable. You're standing on someone's actual spiritual labor when you open up those things. When you open up AI and you ask it to write a sermon, there's no one who's prayed over what it gives you. No one was convicted by it. No one wrestled with God right before and left that wrestling bleed into the words that populate on your page. Jesus said in John chapter 10, "My sheep hear my voice." They don't hear like a voice, not an average voice that is ever spoken or some random person off the street, a voice, a relational, specific voice. AI can give you information and sometimes great and sometimes not, but it cannot give you a voice that you are being formed by because it isn't a someone. It's a something. When Jacob wrestled with God, he walked away limping. When Moses spent 40 days on the mountaintop, he walked away with his face glowing. When Paul spent years alone in Arabia before he ever preached a single word, he walked away transformed. Do you notice something there that they all have in common? None of those people walked away with better information. They walked away different. Because every real encounter with God leaves a fingerprint. AI, it can produce content, but it can't produce transformation. Because transformation doesn't happen when a sermon's finished. It happens while the sermon is being formed. Because in the process, God is forming the person that is writing it. Me and you and anyone that is teaching or preaching. And that's the whole difference between a tool and a substitute. A tool sharpens what a person already brings to it. A substitute replaces the person. Now, if you're sitting here and you're realizing maybe you've drifted into this without meaning to, I don't want you to hear shame as we talk about these things. I've had weeks where I put 10 hours into studying a text, reading it, cross-referencing between this and this and this and this, digging into the original language. And when I actually stood up to teach, out of those 10 hours, maybe 25% of that research actually made it into the message. And for years, I thought I'd wasted all that time. Man, why did you do that? Why did you go that deep? You didn't have to do that. But now I think that those hours were never about the sermon. I think looking back, I realized that they were about me. That God was shaping the messenger long before he was shaping the message. And then there's the other side of it. Those times where I've prayed and been guided and led and wrote an amazing message, practiced it a couple times, sounded great, and then 24 hours before it were to happen, I feel the Holy Spirit nudge me and shift the entire direction. I mean, there's something powerful about when that happens, but there's also the pressure is on. And what he guided me to ended up hitting so much deeper. But I realized that in the process, God was still continuing to form me, not just prepare me, but actually form me. And that's what AI can't do for you. AI can give you output. It can't give you the hours that were poured in to make you into someone who actually had God's word to say. I've had seasons where I leaned into someone else's structure because I was tired or scared, or I just didn't have it in me that week. That's not new to AI. That's just being human and being tired, if we're being honest. The call that I'm doing here isn't for guilt. The call that I'm doing is to realize and to come back. To come back to wrestling with God, to come back to sitting with the text again and letting your prayer life shape your words before a tool ever touches them. That's not like a punishment. That's actually the good part. That's the part where God continuously gets to use you, not just your output. So here's the practical piece. If you use AI at all in your ministry, and a lot of us do, I want to challenge you to flip the order. If AI has become your first stop, make it your last. Pray first. Sit with the passage. Wrestle with it. Actually wrestle, the kind where you don't leave until something happens within you through God using you before you ever click or tap and open that tool. Then after all of that, if you want to run it past AI to check those blind spots, or maybe to sharpen an illustration or catch something you may have missed, fine. That's the tool being used as a tool. That's the idea of like a commentary, an outside resource. It's not a replacement. And here's the question I'd leave you with today, because I think this question cuts right to it. Could you tell your congregation, your small group, your youth ministry, your kids ministry out loud exactly how much of this week's message came from you wrestling with God? Going and poring over those verses? And then could you also tell them how much of it came from a tool? And would you be okay hearing that answer from another pastor? Because the answer is going to tell you the truth about which one is actually leading you. We don't become mature because we arrive at the answers. We become mature because we stay in the question long enough for God to change us. So that's it for this one. If you're just tuning in for the first time, or maybe you've been here 100 times, do me a favor, subscribe, follow whatever platform you're on, like something, leave a comment if this made an impact. And also, if you know that it hit you in some way, share it with someone else that is wrestling through this, or maybe they're leaning on it just a little too much than they realize. But until then, I am Josh, and this is Beyond the Numbers. This is a podcast where we have real and raw conversations about what healthy ministry and healthy leaders should look like in our churches, making it more Christ-like and less like the world. And hey, if you want to see exactly how a fully generated AI short goes, keep on tuning in, because later on this week, we're going to drop it. And then I will put a link in this description so that you can see it, because it'll be unedited and it'll go exactly as AI told me to. We'll see how many clicks it gets. I want you to get more than this video. Coming back to the truth of this episode. The danger was never that AI has no fingerprints. The danger is that eventually neither do we.